G'day everyone and welcome to Flock, New Orleans Pelicans podcast, hosted by me, Lyle Swithenbank, at Lyle Swithenbank on X and TikTok and YouTube and all over the shop. Hit that like and subscribe button and let's get into it. As you can see, we've got some special guests today. We have, all the way from NewOrleans.basketball podcast, Rattler and Garrick Rattler. Guys, how are we? Welcome to the show. Garrick, how's things? Good to see you, mate.
It's all good, man. All good. This is long overdue, man. Let me tell you something. To be in the presence of what I consider the Australian, this is the middleman, right? This is the man, the myth, the legend, Lyle, man. It's so great to be on, man. Appreciate you having us on. This is long overdue, and I think this is a good time for us to get into it as the Pels make their way over to your stomping grounds. How's everything, Raph?
Everything is blessed on my side, as always. Like my brother said, blessed to be here. I'm looking forward to it. Again, Lyle's been through it from the beginning with all of the nonsense and things that have happened, and I'm ready to get to it and chop it up with you with, I think, how things are turning on leaves. So we'll see.
Raph, I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? And let's start there. All of the nonsense, been through it all. We're in year 7 of Zion. I know they're asterisking that and saying year 6, but it's year 7. Joe Dumars takes the reins. Change of regime. Griff out, Joe in, Willie Green still in the seat. What have you seen so far from this off-season? We've seen a little bit of Joe, a little bit of training camp now. What's your sort of takeaway from the change, from Joe D, his regime change?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that first and pass to my brother. The first thing I would say, Lyle, and we talked about this a little bit on our podcast as well, is that it feels like for the first time in a while, there's a direction the Pelicans are going. Like, this is built around Zion. The pieces around it are going to complement Zion. They're going to complement one another versus trying to figure out square peg, round hole. For better or for worse, with some of the aggressive moves that the Pelicans have made this summer with the draft day trades and trading for Jordan Poole and things like that, I just think that the organization feels as if, hey, we know what we're going to be, and that's what we're going to go for. It may steer you off-road, it may steer you the right direction, but you're always going to be pushing at least together in one way. And I think over the last couple of years with Griffin, there were people who were like, hey, we're done with Zion, and hey, no, we still, and I just think it was fragmented along the way. And I think now with Joe and with Troy Weaver coming together, you at least have a clear path of where things are going and how you may pivot from there. And I think that's a breath of fresh air. What do you think, Garrick?
Yeah. I think it's if you look at it, it's almost like they brought in like the principal into the office, right? Like David Griffin, for so many times, for so many different reasons, it always felt like there was a little bit of a lack of firmness or a lack of, this is what this is a non-negotiable, and non-negotiables are non-negotiables for a reason. And when Joe Dumars speaks, you kind of feel that, right? Like he's been a straight shooter. Even since he's gotten here, he's talked about the things that he wanted to do, right? And we mentioned on our podcast that this is kind of a doubling down on Zion through the eyes and words of Joe Dumars, but it's also a doubling down on protecting the franchise. When you look at some of these moves that are brought in with guys who are able to play, when and if Zion is not available to be on the court. Knock on wood, with the way things are looking now with Zion, maybe that won't be as much of an issue. But this is an opportunity for both, Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver to kind of reestablish some standing as far as being in NBA offices, because, obviously one was in the league office, and one has been, dealing with the Washington Wizards, as an organization. But I think now with Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver looking to hit the ground running, Zion looking to kind of reestablish himself on the basketball scene, I think it's a hand-in-glove fit right now for everybody kind of, like Jordan Poole talked about, being internally motivated. And I think it starts with Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver at the top.
I think you're exactly right. Griffin came in with this family mentality. It was wholesome. You know, everyone's going to buy in, one team, one dream. And sometimes you get that, and I think you cast your mind back to school, and you had substitute teacher would come in, and they wouldn't take control of the class from the beginning, and the kid just runs amok. The whole class is carrying on. Griff came in with that mentality. I want to be your friend. You know, Zion's great. Like, we've got to make him happy. We've just had all the AD saga. And once you lose that control and the hierarchy, you can't put the genie back into the bottle. And I think as we got the way through, is Zion obviously had his own off-court issues and battles and challenges. He's spoken about that at length. All of a sudden, Griff wasn't that, you know, the boss. He was also just one of the colleagues, and it's really difficult to then try to put that discipline back in, like he tried. You know, he suspended him for being late for the team playing, last year. You can't win that back. And after 6 years, I think it was almost at a point where the respect, you know, maybe not overtly, but was definitely not at the level it probably needed to be. And so Joe D has come in. He set the tone. This is what I expect. It's okay if you can't meet my standards, but you can leave. You know, it's my way or the highway. And I think you need that. In a professional organisation, you need someone who's going to lead and that can manage. And I think he's done that. One thing he didn't do was, despite the court of public opinion, is get rid of Willie Green. Willie Green's getting another year. He's got an opportunity, I suppose, to keep his job or lose it. And Joe's going to be able to assess, is what he's talked about. Garrick, what are your thoughts on the Willie Green situation? Is this an opportunity for him to show he deserves a contract extension?
I mean, Lyle, this is. I mean, you look at the organization, man. Zion is there, but David Griffin is no longer there. Brandon Ingram is no longer there. C.J. McCollum is no longer there. T. Spoon is no longer there. Swin Cash is no longer there. Bryson Graham is no. You go down the list, and it's like, okay, they've gotten rid of, you know, this person, that person, that person. If it doesn't work, you know, the next domino to fall, you know, other than trading Zion away, would be Willie Green, right? And so this is an opportunity for him to stake his claim. Again, you want to give him, you know, some grace because, you know, with the roster situation, the franchise situation, not having your star player, not having your best player, all of that is fair, you know, fair things to mention when you mention Willie Green. But at some point, the buck has to stop with you. And so this is an opportunity with Zion, with a renewed focus, with an assortment of talent on the floor that he has not had as far as offensive-wise. This is going to be an opportunity, and it's going to be a challenge for him because there's a lot of guys that need opportunities to play. There are a lot of guys that need opportunities to play that don't really fit a traditional Willie Green player, and I think we all know what those players look like. But those guys are going to need to be, you know, going to need to play, especially a guy like Derek Queen, who you've staked so much, draft capital in. And so it's going to be interesting to see this push-pull with Willie Green because this is an opportunity for him to like you say, go for that contract extension or, you know, whatever it is that he needs to prove to the NBA world. This is a good opportunity for him as well. When you talk about that internal motivation, he's part of that as well. And so it is going to be, you know, it's going to be a season where a lot of eyes are going to be on Willie Green. And if this team comes out, and again, if you have Zion and Trey and Herb and Jordan Poole healthy and Jeremiah Fears, and you start off this season like we've seen so many Pelican seasons start off, you know, that's going to be, you know, all eyes are going to be on Willie Green. What you got, Raph?
I think from my end, it's twofold for sure. I think, you know, to everyone's feelings, faults, emotion, whatever it may be, everyone is justified to feel how you want to feel. You can feel as if, hey, the team was headed in the right direction. They were winning more games season after season, second most wins in franchise history. They had a bad season, all the injuries. How can you blame the coach? You could also look at it and say, hey, from the players and the situations and the game plans that you did have available, maybe you didn't maximize that in the best way possible up until this point. So just because I'm going to give you more talent still doesn't mean you're the right coach. My brother and I, always on our podcast say the same thing. Two things can be true, right? It can be a mix of all of those things together. I think when Willie Green came in, the montage, people have to remember, like, the entire league was like, Willie Green is the next guy. So it's not like the Pelicans didn't do their due diligence in hiring him. And when he came in with the mindset of athleticism and tempo and speed and defense. Well, what he inherited didn't necessarily suit that with CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram and Jonas Valanciunas and players like that. And so the year last year where you finally got to get more athletes in your lineup, everything went to hell, right? And so that's hard to judge. To my brother's point, now you're on the main stage. But I think, and similarly to, how I think the Pelicans have kind of redevoted to Zion this past year, not even the past couple months, this last year, you also have to remember that, like, Willie Green and Joe Dumars had a relationship prior to him working in the Pelicans, prior to him going to the NBA. So when Joe Dumars got hired, something tells me they knew they were going to keep Willie Green then, right, at that point. And so now the same way you have to be critical about the success or failures of the season, you also have to look at it now as Willie Green has another guy in his corner too that believes what he's trying to put on the court, and they think the basketball in very similar ways. And so I'm interested to see for both Zion and Willie Green, with everything at your disposal, what does it look like then?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well, that prior relationship between the Detroit connection, I suppose. One thing as well that I've been thinking about is, we talked a few years ago, it was like, let's get Willie Green someone experienced on the bench. You've got James Borrego, they bring him in as that sort of sounding board, he's been a head coach. Joe D's probably another one of those guys that has come in and, he has won at the highest level as player and executive, knows what good coaching looks like, knows what the expectation is, and he's probably also another sounding board and it sounds like it has been, they've been talking about catching up and watching trainings and things together. Perhaps that's also another positive influence on Willie Green and his development. I mean, he's only in his fifth year now, I suppose, coming in. It still takes a bit of time. Well, they say 10,000 hours before you're a master of anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's another person, like you said, that's a safe pair of hands, someone that you trust, that can give you that honest feedback, and perhaps he takes another step. I think only time will tell, and let's just hope it's not the injury gods that decide to, wreak havoc on us again this year. I'm praying, I'm hoping and praying, and to everything that we can get away with that. But I suppose now we're about a week out from, or not even 5 days before we see the first version of this Pelicans preseason, whatever they decide to roll out. I don't know if it's going to be a full game or of the main players. It's probably going to be some sort of smattering of minutes restrictions given the travel and the like down in Australia. What are you hoping for? I'll start with Raph on this one. What are you hoping to see out of this first preseason game against Melbourne United on Friday down in Australia?
Yeah, I think, Lyle, to your point, I'm not sure what rotations you're going to see, how many minutes you're going to see from Zion and Jordan Poole and things like that. But I think the most important thing, and I think the thing that's going to be most glaring, no matter how many minutes are played, is the style and pace in which the Pelicans play. Like, this roster is more suited to be up-tempo, to run after makes, to constantly be in motion, whether you're on offense or the defensive end. And now, since you have a roster that's more conducive to that, I want to see, is the game and the pace in which they play a little bit more picked up. Obviously, your first preseason game playing together, I don't expect everything to be smooth and there'll be alley-oops all over the gym. Hopefully, for your sake and for everyone in attendance sake, there is. But I'm just looking to see, are the Pelicans going to play with pace, play with aggression, and play with the style pace that lends to their suitorship. So that's kind of where I'm at it with it. What are you looking for, Garrick?
Well, first things first, with all the news that's in the NBA circle right now, first thing is no injuries. We don't need any. Oh, somebody landed wrong and tweet this and tweet that. I think that's first things first. I think honestly, after injuries, the one thing I'm going to be looking for is what has Jeremiah Fears brought into from Summer League into now, right? Like we saw him playing in Summer League, and we saw some of the things that you heard pre-draft, right? His speed, his quickness, his handle. But I told my brother, we've talked about this on the podcast, the thing that surprised me the most was his ability to jump in the air and make some really good passes. And I think, we talk about people jumping in the air, and that's not a good thing to do, especially when you don't have a plan. But for him, because he's so quick and so he, got such a quick step and fast, that looked, it was like a weapon for him. And I say, a lot of these passes that he was kicking out, if those guys are Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and Jordan Poole, taking those shots, Jordan Hawkins, I think, some of the assist numbers that we saw in the Summer League from Zero Fears would be even better. So now to go from Summer League, you've gone through a small training camp. You've played with some of the veterans. You saw him at Media Day with Jordan Poole, which, me and my brother talked about. I want him to get a little bit of talking to from Jordan Poole. I want to get a little bit from DeJounte Murray, because I think both of them have skill sets that they have that Jeremiah Fears can also has. When you talk about the passing and of DeJounte Murray and the shooting ability of Jordan Poole. What has he learned from that Summer League up until now? Again, I don't know what the rotation is going to be, who he's going to play with. But at the same time, you've been in the training camp. We've seen the clips of you out there with him. And so, with him being such an important piece going into the season, especially with, DeJounte Murray not being available, at least for the beginning of the season, it's going to be exciting to see what he can bring from there. And can he put it all together, that skill, that quickness, that handle, and put together a little bit more of a maturity aspect on the court. Because I don't want him to slow down, because that's what makes it better. I just want him to make better decisions as he plays with that quick speed. I'm going to be very interested to see what he looks like in his first real, put the Pelicans jersey on, and be out there with potentially some of the regular rotation players.
I have been trying to keep a lid on Jeremiah Fears, but I am so excited to watch him play. That guy,
understandable.
You see the little highlights, and you're like, is that a bit of Derrick Rose? Is that a bit of Russell Westbrook? And you're just like, do I dare to dream? And, of course, I'm, comparing him to some of the all-timers, but there's just a little bit of something about the guy that he has that real... chip on his shoulder, like he comes, like everyone's his enemy on the court, which I love, that competitive energy where he comes in, he's like, nah, I'm going at you 100%. Being able to break down defenses with his speed is going to be such an asset for this team, because it's been for so long that the only person that could do it was Zion, and then you get a little bit of like CJ when he was feeling good, otherwise you would get like, oh no, I'm going to do a step back, because he lost that step as he got a bit older. That's the best of us. Don't. I won't.
Yeah, lying. Not lying.
But when you've got a guy like that can get to the basket at will, and then also realise, actually, I'm about to get blocked into oblivion. I've got Trey in the corner. I've got Herb. I've got Jordan Poole. Like you're saying, that to me is you're giving a guy with all the talent to make the pass, the weapons to turn it into assists and to be able to create for others. And when you've got that ability to break down defenses, he can punch in and Zion just trails in behind him. I mean, what are you going to do? People have to react, otherwise he's just going to lay the ball in. So, of course, I don't think this is a day one thing, but the potential by no means is there. I think he looks fantastic. The other guy that obviously there's been much talked about in the off season, because we traded a couple of draft picks for him, was Derek Queen, and he's had a broken thumb, I think, arm up until what they say 12 weeks or something. He did it in summer league. From pictures of him, he's looking in pretty good shape. Like, I think that was the focus, right? Get him into this elite body shape to be able to then compete at this level, which is probably something you come into summer league a little bit, I don't know, a bit like you'd been in college and like you'd been in an off season, not in a professional environment.
Yep.
Garrick, on Derek Queen, what's the expectations for him? Because he's not a traditional Willie Green guy, but has all the talent in the world from all reports. What do you expect to see from him for year one?
Yeah, I listen. I think Derek Queen is. It's funny because we've been talking about this, all off season. The Pelicans have added a lot of like pieces that they just have not had in a long time. We talk about the Jeremiah Fears, the speedy up and down point guard. Like you tried it with Kyra Lewis, but Jeremiah Fears it's a little different with him. We talked about Jordan Hawkins and the movement shooting, right? Not since JJ Redick, and even he wasn't really like the kind of athlete that Jordan Hawkins is. And Derek Queen falls right into that as well. Like Derek Queen is a bucket getter. My brother likes, to liken him to Bobby Portis. I think that's a really good way to look at him. I do think that Derek Queen is a 4 right now because of his, not the rim protection isn't really his forte right now. And anchoring a type of defense, I think he is like Bobby Portis and another guy like Naz Reid. But I mean, the basketball IQ is there as well. Like when you think about an offensive hub and you think about a guy who you could put on the block, you could put him on the extended free throw, you could put him at the top of the key, and you trust him to make, any kind of play, right? A triple threat kind of guy that can take you off the dribble, that can spot up and shoot a 3, and that can post up and hit passing, fill passing lanes, with good crisp passes. I think that Derek Queen has a lot of that, and the Pelicans have not really had that kind of guy. Now, again, when you talk about, him being not being a Willie Green guy, I think that's going to be his biggest challenge, is going to be making himself not, you can't keep him off the floor, right? And that's going to be his work habits. Like you talked about, you're hurt, and Joe Dumars said, your leg's not hurt. You can still run. You can still put yourself in a good position, to get, better shape. And we've seen some of that from the beginning. And again, I think a lot of this goes back to Zion, because if Zion is coming in and he's looking the way he gets, Derek Queen has no excuse to not be hitting it twice a day, things like that. The kind of way Jordan Poole talked about him and Herb Jones. And so I think that Derek Queen is gonna be. He's going to have to be featured to get the best out of him. I don't think that this is somebody you can just kind of park on the side and kind of have him just stand on the side and be a floor spacer. Like, you're going to have to feature him, get him involved, let him touch the ball, let him get other guys involved, let him work. You saw some of that in Summer League when they actually gave him the ball and let him be a little bit more aggressive. So I think that Derek Queen is going to be, an important piece to the Pelicans, especially when you think about the big man rotation. But I do think that there's going to be some growing pains for him. But I think that he needs, and this goes for Jeremiah Fears as well, and Micah Peavy, that those guys need to be able to play through those growing pains and learn, because that's the only way you're going to get the best version out of him. And with the draft equity and capital that you put in, you want to make sure that you're putting him in the best opportunity to maximize on that return.
Right. I'm not gonna lie to you, Lyle. I've been a fan of Derek Queen since the beginning of the draft process, because this is a player who I think fits the Pelicans extremely well. That was before Joe Dumars became the GM, who already had a relationship with things like that. The Pelicans have been needing someone who can generate a shot for themselves and for other people's in the post, like down low, and had a bigger body, because you had Brandon Ingram, you had Trey Murphy, you've had slender type guys that once, as you've seen watching the Pelicans over the last couple of years, it's a trend. Once teams began to impose their will and their physicality, and Zion wasn't on the court, there wasn't a whole lot of other bigger guys that could play in that world and play in a phone booth, so to speak. And Derek Queen,
they did not give the ball to Jonas Valanciunas.
They did not drop the ball to JB. He would just call for it and just be respectfully declined. But with a player like Derek Queen, who, it's crazy that he's about 6 months younger than Yves Missi, but it seems just by watching him play the game, his first college game at Maryland, he had 20 and 20. Like, it's a player who has an advanced level of IQ. Those type of players tend to do well in the NBA just because they can find ways to impact the game, whether they have the ball, whether they don't have it, whether they're scoring, whether not. The smart players who also have the skill to go with it tend to find a way to impact the game. And Joe Dumars preached it over and over and over. We want to draft a guy, Jeremiah Fears included. They were the only freshmen who impacted winning. And it looked like the main initiators of offense, the main scoring hubs and things like that. But when you're looking at a team like the Pelicans have that seem to be pretty deep at a lot of positions, and you're looking for where you're going to slot minutes in for these 20-year-olds, when you get those 10 to 15 minutes, how can you impact the game if it's not shooting? Like Jeremiah Fears, if you don't have the ball, what are you doing on the defensive end? Or what are you doing, to get other people, setting screens for other people? What other things are you doing, right? And for a player like Derek Queen, even, if he's, not an A+ on the defensive end, what did this Pelicans team lack severely last year? Rebounding. Yeah. He's going to be one of the better rebounders on the team. So he's going to force himself onto the court one way or the other, whether it's by his pure size or whether it's for the fact that he's going to be getting other people involved and be able to set the table for himself and for others. And you just don't have a whole lot of guys that are primary scorers outside of the rookies that you two drafted. So I just think that the skill set that Derek Queen has, he has a chance to be really special in a unique role as a rookie. And honestly, like, I watched almost every single game of Derek Queen's Maryland career. It's not his defense, is not his lack of ability. It's been the lack of will, right? And the lack of conditioning. I compare it very similarly to Zion. A lot of the plays, he was a step slow just because he probably was tired. And he probably was like, hey, if I got to score all the points, I'm not going to give 100%. Well, in a situation like this, when you're a rookie and you're fighting to get minutes, that's the only way you get on the court, right? And so him trimming himself down prior to the preseason or during this injury is going to allow him the best chance to both defend and prove that he can stay on the court, but also make an impact as a rookie.
Yeah, real quick, Lyle. To my brother's point, I think the comparison to Zion is spot on, and also in the fact that he reminds me of Zion in the sense that, Zion, when he was in high school, and we've seen the viral video of him with the guys guarding. Zion didn't have to work out. He didn't really have to keep himself up to a standard to dominate on the floor because he was so athletic, because he was so much better than a lot of guys he played. I think Derek Queen had a lot of that as well. Like, he was just bigger and he was stronger than everybody. And so you don't really need to keep yourself in the tip-top condition to go out there and dominate until you get to the NBA and you see that everyone is of the one-on-one. And when we talk about his basketball IQ and the way he approaches the game, he has a very cerebral game. I think you can mention like a lot of Jokic and Sengun. Not obviously he's not that kind of player, but that cerebral thing. And I think another guy that he plays like in that he can have a longevity of it, and you'll like this, Lyle. He has a lot of Joe Ingles in him, right? Just a lot of crafty scoring, crafty getting to his spots and things like that. And so if that's the kind of player, those type of players tend to have a long career. We think about guys like him and Boris Diaw, just little like guys who are really fit into a cerebral type of category that play the game, can be crafty and get to places like that. I think that's the kind of player that Derek Queen can be in, the kind of career that he can have if he maintains his body and keep that same focus.
And that ability to create for others and know where to pick advantages. I think that's something we saw a little bit in Summer League, is that, hang on, I'll go, I know I'm not going to get the ball that much because everyone's trying to audition. When I do, it's going to be offensive rebounds, defensive rebounding, I might get 13 points, but he ended up with 13 rebounds in, 2 or 3 of the games. Mm-hmm. I like that, just in the small smatter. I don't watch college basketball at all, so I can't really comment on any of that. But what I did see of him, I can see the talent, and you can see the brain sort of ticking when he's out there. How do I be successful here? And I think the next step is that conditioning, right, where he can beat some of those smaller guys with his athleticism as well as his size. Because at the moment, the matchup is, well, I could probably put a smaller guy on you because I can just wear you out. And if you're not fit enough to sort of go for the full, quarter or minute allocation that you're out there, well, they're just going to keep whittling away, and it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Speaking of rebounding-ish, sort of segue to that, Kevon Looney joins the Pelicans, loves a rebound. We suffered on that last year especially. I mean, injuries aside, we got rid of Jonas. You had Daniel Tice out there for like this cameo sort of, guest special.
That's a good way. That's a good way to describe that, a cameo.
We did. Well, we were convincing ourselves we were rebounding by committee, and all it meant is that we didn't get any rebounds, and we got smashed all over the committee didn't show up. There was no president of the committee, and that was that was difficult. Kevon Looney comes in with the championship caliber, the ability to grab rebounds at will, and a willingness to teach these other guys. Garrick, on Kevon Looney, what does he bring to this Pelican? He wanted to be here. What does he bring to this Pelican squad that could benefit us, I guess?
Yeah, I think that Kevon Looney is gonna do a lot for the Pelicans. I think we very similar to how we talk about C.J. McCollum and the things that he did on the floor, but you talk about the things that he did off the floor, right? When you talk about the professionalism with Bri and Zion, when you talk about the getting everybody together on one accord, this big man group for the Pelicans is very, very young and very, very raw, right? When you talk about Yves Missi just picked up basketball 2-3 years ago, and 3-4 years ago, and is still learning how to be a professional basketball player. When you think about Carlo, right, and Carlos, many travels across Europe and other places where he's played, and now he's an NBA player now, and he's starting to learn and develop some things, and then obviously with Derek Queen, right, and getting him on board with being a professional, and then getting him focused and lined up on the right task. But one thing that Kevon Looney has done throughout his entire career is find a way to rebound, but to make smart, timely rebounds, right? And I think that, and for him not being a crazy athlete, you have to have a lot of brain power and some more IQ that we've been talking about when you're talking about getting rebounds, being crafty, doing your work early, beating people to spots, learning anticipation. Those are the type of things that he can impart that kind of knowledge on this young big man role. And we've talked about this a lot as well on our podcast. It's one thing to have veterans who are coming on the team, and they do a lot of their coaching on the sidelines, right, and towards the end of the bench. It's another thing to have guys like C.J. McCollum who will tell you one thing and then go out there and get 30. And then, it's another thing like when you talk about Kevon Looney, another guy who will tell you and teach you those things, and then you sitting down because he's the one getting 5 rebounds at the in the fourth quarter of a tough game. So you see that work kind of translating right in front of you. And I think that's the kind of things that Kevon Looney can bring in. He's going to be an innings eater, right? This is a guy who plays almost every game, which scares the hell out of me because it's, the immovable object and the unstoppable force, with the unstoppable force being Kevon Looney's games played and the immovable force being New Orleans Pelicans health history. It's going to be crazy to see Godzilla and King Kong fight each other for that. But this is a guy, he's going to be an innings eater. He's going to be able to play some of those games that's in, the middle of December, and it's a Tuesday in Portland, and then you look at Kevon Looney has 12 rebounds that game because he's a guy that brings that professionalism every game. And so I think Kevon Looney is going to bring a lot to this team, and I think he's the kind of guy that, with this team being so young and the big men being so young, that you go out and you pay a little extra for because you are a small market, because you have all of these other different preconceived notions and baggage come along with you. You get that kind of champion inside of the locker room, and you let him flourish. And it doesn't hurt that he's really tight with Jordan Poole, another guy you're bringing in to kind of help both of them kind of integrate into this new situation together easily.
Yeah, I think my brother hit on all the points. The only one I would add is, I think that, again, that the NBA is going to look very interesting this year. I think a lot of people are going to be starting 2 7-footers. I think there's going to be a lot of, especially in the West, a lot of times you're going to battle size. And even though the Pelicans need to a man, get better at rebounding, whether it's Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, things like that, you're still not going to be able to out-rebound 7'2" and 7'1" and things like that. And so for a player like Loon, I think that, to my brother's point, he's going to be able to teach these young guys who, there was a person to learn how to rebound from, it would be the undersized guy who's been in the league and won championships and rebounded for his entire career, right? From that aspect. But also, I think from what I saw from Carlo last season and his development as his minutes grew and what you're going to get from Derek Queen, like we just talked about, I think there's some two big lineups in there where, hey, you guys just be athletes at the 4, even though you're 7 foot tall, and Lou's going to pick up all the trash and get all the rebounds. And I'm interested to see what the lineups like that can play out, because I think one of the main daggers or weapons that the Pelicans will have will be versatility from that standpoint. I think Loon gives you another weapon that you could throw in the arsenal and different lineups in front of a different matchup. So I think he's going to be a great fit for this team, both in the locker room and on the court.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him, and I mean the screen setting. I think if he can get that, Golden State whistle, if he can bring that with him, that would be, that's the cherry on top, because Trey Murphy curling off a screen from Looney when his defender's lying on the ground, because he's got there half a second late, but the umpire didn't call it. I don't mind it at all, but yeah, I fear for opposing defenses with his bone-rattling screens that he's able to hit. I like the two big lineup idea. I think, and that's not including Zion, right? You could bring out two guys with Zion at the point, or 2 or 3 or whatever the Zion position, wherever he is, and all of a sudden you're absolutely dominating the boards. You're dominating in size, and the old adage, you can't teach tall, rings through, right? Because you're too athletic and too small to be able to play your traditional bigs against these guys, but at the same time, no one really has those, maybe the amount of rotational 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" sort of guys that they could throw at you consistently. I don't know if there's many other teams like that. The West is very tall, the East is sort of, so-so at times, and depending on the size, but I think there's a lot of weapons on this team, and I think the 31, over-under that they've given us in the wins column, I think is a little rich, considering, who knows, given Memphis's injury news and already with Portland injury news and whatever's going on in the Clippers, gosh, whatever scandal that is, we can't beat, you can't beat the NBA narrative. So if you get the opportunity to be successful, and you got health, because health is wealth, you have to win the games, and you have to go and surprise teams when you get the opportunity to, and I think we have the opportunity to do that this year. The other big addition this year was Jordan Poole. He has come in, and they're talking about him like he's he's someone they haven't seen before, like one of those mythical MJ, Kobe type LeBrons. He's always in the gym, he's up at 3 a.m, bouncing the basketball. It seems to have set the tone, right? Because you got guys like Herb Jones buying into that. You got guys like Trey Murphy, Zion. We've seen pictures of him working out after. It's a guy that's obsessed with basketball, which was the line that was floated around in media day. Raph, what does Jordan Poole bring to this team, and does he have an opportunity to sort of reinvent himself after a couple of so-so years in Washington team-wise?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, and I know my brother's getting ready to talk on this as well, but I think that Jordan Poole can have a big impact on the Pelicans. I think that, again, the NBA is very much the entertainment business, and so whatever storyline is hot at the moment, that's what's going to ride the waves, and that's what's going to impact Vegas and things like that. So if the last time you heard of Jordan Poole and he was shooting 80-foot shots in Washington, the only thing you're going to think is that Jordan Poole is an unserious player. But in reality, if you look at the situation he was in Golden State, and you look at the situation where he is in now, while DeJounte's on the bench, he's going to be a starter. But if you look at what he's being asked to do, it's in a much different spot. Most teams are not going to come out and say, Jordan Poole's our number one option. We'll figure out what we're going to do with Zion and Trey Murphy. Most teams are going to figure out ways to prevent those two from getting to their spots, and then it's Jordan Poole. So in a very, twisted way, and unfortunately, by hook or by crook, Jordan Poole came in to play this job and the role that CJ McCollum was brought in to play. He's just much younger. They have a similar skill set, and this time it actually figures out that Zion's on the right page, right? And he's in the right footing, versus when CJ came in, he never really got too much of that, and none to his fault, right? And so for Jordan Poole to come into a system where he has a lot of familiarity, he has familiarity with some of the personnel, a lot of the rosters around his age, he's got a chip on his back. He's playing off a gravitational pull similar to Steph Curry. It manifests itself in different ways, but the pull is very similar. Now you're playing in a much different space, and you're playing with a much different mentality. And so I think with giving those variables, I think Jordan Poole has a really good chance to resurrect his brand in the NBA. And again, whether that's with the Pelicans or whether that's for someone else, I think that, again, the more games you see with Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, and Jordan Poole, you're going to see some splash party, and you're going to see some pool party moments. So what are your thoughts on it, Garrick? Because I know you were very high on this acquisition.
Yeah, I really like the Jordan Poole acquisition for the Pelican. I think that he is the type of respected bucket getter, again, that the Pelicans just haven't had, right? Like you could talk about guys I mentioned on our podcast, like Marcus Thornton way back when, was just a guy that could just come in and get 20 points, starting, coming off the bench, regardless. They know that guy can get 20, right? And again, you're going to find some things with Jordan Poole that remind you of CJ McCollum, both positively and negatively, right? Like he has a lot of, put the shot up, get it up there, and a lot of the things that you saw from CJ McCollum. But I think that he also, on the positive light, like he's a guy that can get his own shot, and he's a guy that can beat you off the dribble in a myriad of ways. You already see him talking about his leadership. You see him working with Zion afterwards on their two-man game, and him coaching him where you like to be. When I roll, you want me to throw it up top, you want it here. Just things like that, right? And again, Jordan Poole is a champion, and then he is a guy that contributed to a championship organization. He didn't just ride the coattails, right? Like this isn't, Kendrick Perkins starting with that starting five. It was Jordan Poole was part of this, of that run. And I think a lot of things that Jordan Poole has gone through, I mentioned it on our podcast, is very similar to what Kyrie Irving went through, right? When Kyrie Irving was with Cleveland and he had LeBron and there was a lot of success, he got a lot big on himself, right? Like, hey, I think I can do this on my own. I can lead a franchise. Then he went to Boston and he saw how difficult it was and how hard it was, right? And so then he said, okay, listen, I understand that this is not, there was a video about him apologizing to LeBron and things like that. And then he went to Brooklyn, and now he went to Dallas, and he became more of a team player, and now he led a team as the second option to the finals. That's a lot what Jordan Poole went through, right? He was with Golden State and was winning, and thought he could be a lot more, right? And then he went to Washington, and he was the number one option, and it was sent to oblivion, right? The shadow realm, because nobody cared. There was unserious basketball being played, and now he's coming back to a team where there's superstar, there's a hierarchy already there. Zion is already established as the franchise player. Trey Murphy is already established as, the homegrown talent, potential all-star player. You got guys like Herb Jones there, right? DeJounte is already established in the locker room, although he's only been there for a short amount of time. He's been in a training camp and been through the trenches with the guys. And so now your job is to just come in and just hoop. Do the things that's best for you, and then you also have a lot of roster guys that can play with your play style. And then the last thing on Jordan Poole, his defense is what people question and talk about. Quiet as kept, Jordan Poole had a career year in steals last year, right? He had his best year playing in a bad organization, still giving that defensive effort and getting his career in steals. And when you put him on the team, you got guys flying around like Zion, and you got guys like Herb flying around, and Trey flying around, and Yves Missi flying around. Now Jordan Poole can kind of play into those passing lanes and do some of those things and turn that defense into offense like he's going to want to do. And so I think, when he gets to the Smoothie King Center, and we all know how the energy PowerPoint 3-point shot is, and how, Jose can come in and spark the team up. I think Jordan Poole is going to be a lot of that. It's going to be a lot of pool party celebrations in the Smoothie King Center from him hitting deep threes and getting the crowd involved because he's a crowd kind of guy. And I just think that this fit with the Pelicans. Right now, the Pelicans need a guy like Jordan Poole, and Jordan Poole needs a team like the Pelicans to kind of help each other out. And I think it's going to be a good symbiotic relationship for the both of them.
Yeah, I like the Kyrie Irving comparison because it is really similar, right? You've got that guy that looks like he's about to take that next leap, and that is to go, and he's backing himself in. Just give me a team. Let me cook. Let me be the driver. And then you realise, hang on, if the team's not on the same page, or the organisation, we looked at Washington and they'd sort of signed a whole heap of that next tier sort of guys, Jones and Kuzma and I don't know what sort of motley crew they'd sort of assembled there, but it didn't work, and then they get thrust into that into the rebuild, then I think it is almost like a reclamation sort of project where he gets to come back and just gets to play basketball. There's not that, and it's well established, like you said, the hierarchy. You got Zion, you got Trey, you got these guys that are willing to come out and do the media side of it, and are being trusted with that. You've got Jordan Poole who can come out and just be himself and just play basketball and take the pressure off. And also, you probably are the third option, right? DeJounte comes back, you're probably the fourth. Depending on how he comes back and what level and the like. But you can't defend everyone. You can't double team everyone. There's not enough players on the court. So what do you give up? I mean, Jordan Poole, what did he shoot? 38% or 39% or something from three last year? You're looking at a guy that if you leave him unguarded, he'll punish you. And he thrives on it. And I think the Smoothie King Center is, at times last year was a little bit sad. There wasn't that many people there at all. And, build it and they will come. And if you've got an exciting team that's winning basketball games and shows that they actually want to be out there, at times last year, I don't blame them. They didn't want to be. And you can see it. I think there's an opportunity to see some real fun basketball this year. I don't know whether it translates to, the ultimate success. Who knows? You never know what sort of run you go on, but at least it's going to be fun. Now, yeah. The biggest news, I suppose, of all that broke the internet, and Bleacher Report were making videos, and gosh, ESPN was on it, and every arm all the way back in. The quote, "Stay over there," and it came from Zion Williamson, who rolled out. And it was almost like, it's the Subway ad or something like that, where they've got, oh, look, I've lost so many pounds or whatever, and he just looks phenomenal. He looks like he has dug in. He looks like it has clicked, and it looks like he wants to be here, and he wants to win some basketball. And you can see that by the mentality that he came out with at Media Day. I think the directive he's received from Joe Dumars, and his transformation, and I don't want to harp on the fact that he's lost weight, all right? That's all part of it. But I think it's all part of this change in psyche that I'm locked in. And all it's going to do is take pressure off his hamstrings, right? Like, I mean, the heavier you are, the hamstrings always, they get hammered. Especially with someone that jumps and runs and uses that quick burst. The day you do your hamstring is the day it feels the best. It feels the best it ever is, and then it goes because you do it one step too much.
That's right.
And having lived through enough of them throughout my journey, I know exactly the feeling. You go, I'm not as fast as I thought I was. Raph, on Zion, what do we expect from him this year? What do we want to see? I mean, every year we do this, right? Oh gosh, look at him. He's changed. This is different though. This feels different, and that'll get clipped and posted everywhere, no doubt.
For sure. My expectations really are blank, just because, again, we've been here before. So what I expect and things like that really is irrelevant. And I think, to your point earlier, I think Zion's gotten to that point now. If I say, hey, I want to be in New Orleans, I want to stay here, you're going to say, no, you're just lying. Yeah. If I say, hey, I want to play in Madison Square Garden, you're going to say he wants to get traded. So it really doesn't matter what I say at this point. At this point, it's about going and doing the work. And as far as, like, what I'm looking to see from Zion, you hit it right on the nail. It's not necessarily the loss in weight. I think that's important. I think that can only help him and his cause to stay on the court. But it's his mentality. That was the number one thing with my brother and I. We do a show. We talk about what would you like to see different. Last year, after the injury, I feel as if Zion's mentality changed, both how he's going to be as a professional. And again, I don't know if that's him becoming a father. I don't know if him saying enough is enough. I want to retake control of my career. I don't know if it's just growing up as a 25-year-old and ready to make the right decisions with so many people's livelihoods impacted by it and him wanting to do right. If you go and look at Zion's career, high school, college, professional, his teammates, his coaches, everyone has good things to say about Zion. It's not like he's this malcontent or he's this person that he's a very charismatic person. I just think there was a lot of growing up that needed to be done, and everyone does that at a different pace. And so now it's all on him. I think the roster is conducive to complement the way he wants to play, how he wants to play. I think, to your point earlier, all of this is a bet on, hey, there's a lot more talent, a lot more bucket getters, so that Zion doesn't have to feel like the weight of the world is on him. But for Willie Green, the thing that he's supposed to be great at is teaching defense. So if I get you a whole bunch of guys who can score, you go teach them defense. You go reinstate, just like you did with Zion and Trey Murphy and everyone else, how important that is. And for Zion, he said it over and over again. The thing that he looks forward to me the most is being an all-defensive player. If he goes out with the mentality that, hey, yeah, I'm unstoppable on the court when I'm Zion, but also I'm unstoppable on both ends, I think that sets the tone for the team. I think that sets the tone for the season. I think that sets the tone for the franchise of who you want to be. Like, if you think of OKC and everyone's going to gravitate to them because of all the great things that they've done, when you think their team, you immediately think hard-nosed. You immediately think in-your-face defense. They may have it going on offense some nights. They may not. But you know that it's going to be hell to play against them every single night. If Zion shows up game one and that's the mentality he plays with and everyone else follows, that sets the tone for where this Pelican team can potentially go. And so that's what I'm looking for, just the mentality from Zion to start day one that hey, to your point, if you weren't with us before, don't be with us now. But now you got to do it as from a result standpoint. So I'm interested to see. I think it's different this time around. But I'm also one of those I got to see it to believe it type people too. Garrick?
Yeah. I'm listen, Zion. We talked about this last season and coming into this season. The alarm bell should have went up last season in media day when Zion said, "I'm maybe game 15, game 20. That's where you're going to see the real Zion," because you can't afford that. You can't afford to have that kind of mentality when you are the face of a franchise, when you are the guy where this doesn't go where we wanted to go without you. And so for him to come into media day already in shape, and we know media day has been an adventure for Zion as well as for for us. Whenever we come, you never know what you might get. You might get a broke foot. You might get I've been away in South Carolina by myself with my stepfather and my little brother doing nothing with the team. Or you might get this version. And again, like to your point, this is different. All right. And so when you think about Z coming in and coming into the season like this, then you know that he's been putting in that work. And there's that tone shift that we talk about when the cameras are not going, what are you doing? And when you talk about what flipped the switch, listen, it could have been an injury. It could have been, him getting a child. It could be just waking up one day and deciding. It could also be, man, you look at the NBA and you look at his contemporaries, right? You look at Jason Tatum. You look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You look at Luka. You look at Giannis. Like, you look at some of the best players, and like they've gone past him. Like they feel like they've gone past him as far as the NBA eye goes. You talk about when this NBA survey that comes out, when you talk about the best U.S. born player, and Zion isn't even on the list. Like, a lot of that is self-inflicted, but it gets to your ego at some point. Like, man, there's no way in the world people should be talking about how much better Tyrese Halliburton is than you, or Jalen Brunson is than you, right? When you talk about Zion and you see what he does on the floor whenever he's available on the floor, and at some point, bro, you just gotta say enough is enough. Like, I'm better than these guys. So, like Derek Queen said, like, I'm better than these guys. Like, I belong in these conversations that you guys have just completely thrown him out of. And again, none of it matters unless you put the work on the floor, right? And that's going to be the most important part. But for Zion, like, this is an opportunity. Again, everybody, the Pelicans are in I've been using the word unique to describe the Pelicans since the day David Griffin took the job. Because you don't come into a situation where you have the number one draft pick and your best player is Anthony Davis and might be asking out. There's just not a lot of times where you have certain situations. The Pelicans again find themselves in a unique situation where the president of the president of basketball operation, he has stuff to prove. The GM has stuff to prove. Zion has stuff to prove. Derek Queen has stuff to prove. Jordan Poole has stuff. A lot of people have a lot of things to prove. And Zion, if he wants to, and if he wants this, you can be the face of this reclamation project for the entire franchise and the city of New Orleans when it comes to the basketball scene. We all remember the Phoenix Suns series. We all remember how rabid this city was. You watch old Saints games, not current Saints games, old Saints games, and you see those fans and people who are rabid and out of their mind. Like my brother always said, those same people, they go home and they live in the same exact city that the New Orleans Pelicans play in. And so you can be the face of this. You can be the face of this, and it starts with the work that you're putting in that offseason and what's going to be on the floor. And I think that Zion is finally starting. Antonio Daniels always talks about growth is not linear. I think now you're finally starting to see, that light switch turn on for Zion. And again, none of it matters until you put it on the floor, but you have to like what you've seen in the process so far and how different it's felt, in times before.
Yeah, and the growth part is so important. That this was an 18-year-old kid when he came in with the weight of the world on his shoulders, and you then go get given $50 million or whatever. Like, that's a lot of money. You've come from pretty modest background, and I think there always has to be that step back and remember that these are also kids that are trying to learn how to be a professional. I'm sure in every industry,
in front of everybody.
In front of
everybody. Yeah.
They'll see your successes and they'll see your mistakes and they'll let you know about them. If that happened to an 18-year-old who came into the corporate environment and that was the case, well, gosh, you wouldn't have them very long. They'd be off somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? Like, right. It's such a unique situation. Of course, remuneration is, supposed to be the sort of softening part of your whole life being on display. But
right.
It takes time to step into those roles. And also, I think we always had the 1A, 1B conversation with Brandon and with Zion, right? Like, Brandon came in as sort of a couple of years older. He won he become an all-star, most improved player, all of that straight away. And it looked like, hang on, well, have we actually got two superstars sitting here? And when you have that situation, and neither of them really played much together at all, just purely because of injury, it never established that hierarchy. It was never Brandon's team. It was never really Zion's team. And I think we probably did a disservice to both of them by not just saying we're going to build around one of you and not the other. And I think we wanted to sort of mesh everyone together, and we never really got to see whose team it could be. But with Zion, I think this is an opportunity now with all the talent around him, with all the support networks. You saw that he's bought into the team. He said, I sat down with the trainer from the Pelicans. That's the first time I've ever heard that. When has he ever sat down with them? He's usually got his own team. It's his stepdad and whoever else he decides to bring in. I sat down with the Pelicans trainer, and we worked out how do we come back from this hamstring, and how do we come back better. And when you get that buy-in, the two-way buy-in from the team and from him and his camp, well, that's a match made in heaven, because all of a sudden you get whatever beast has rolled into to training camp. And I mean, gosh, we go as he goes, right? And you're also, I mean, on the New Orleans point as well, the Saints are bad at the moment. You know, sorry to the Saints fan out there. You know, I've got the little flag there. You have an opportunity to seize the city. The New Orleans public and fans, sports fans, are rabid for sport. Give them something to celebrate. And all of a sudden, you're going to be packing the Smoothie King Centre. I don't know, you got all this talk about, you know, the lease is coming up for this, we need a new stadium, we need that. Well, put people in there, show that we need a new one, and put something on the court that allows people to invest their money and go and watch these teams. So, I don't know, there's a real opportunity for the Pelicans to become, you know, that top sports team this year, given the talent on the respective rosters. But I just think, you know, like I said a couple of times, build it and they will come, and all of a sudden, you know, that opportunity is ripe for the taking. So I genuinely hope they do that. Finally, we'll just touch on Trey Murphy. I know we've been gone for a little while. I appreciate your time so far. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, back from the shoulders. Quick hits on the impact, Garrick, on those two coming back, and what do we see from those two this year?
Yeah, I call them the Tether Twins, man. They are so much. They're so much fun to kind of watch grow. I think, you know, my brother talks about how they're like the inverse of each other. One is offensive side, one is defensive side. Listen, having the NBA is a wing-driven league. You know, I know we just watched Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Tyrese Halliburton kind of go at it. But it is a wing-driven league, and, you know, as many of those guys as you can have. And when you're bringing in, you know, when you're bringing back the first team all defense, I tell everybody that first team all defense that Herb got is not like most other Herb first team all defense, nods that other people have gotten, because it was the first year that you could pick 5 centers if you want to, which tends to be the prevailing thought when you think about defensive players of the year. And Herb still made it. That means that he was the best one of the best defenders in the league. And so, you know, you bring that guy back. You saw the Pelicans defense last year. It was not great. Even with you adding a shot blocker in Yves Missi, you still didn't have that point of attack defender that like Herb. And I think having Herb come in and having his mentality come back, and have that part of this team as they try to rebrand themselves is so important, right? He signed his new contract. He talks about how much he wants to be in New Orleans. Like, that is the kind of guy that I called him a foundational draft pick, and I still think he is. And having him on the floor, kind of quarterbacking the defense, and taking that challenge of the best player every single game, I think is going to be super big for this team. And of course, Trey Murphy, his ascendance that we saw last year before the injury, we've been talking about it. It is real. He did a lot of things that, you know, we didn't expect him, putting the ball on the ground, being the first option, generating offense. I think he started to figure out how difficult it is to be the number one option on the team, where not only do you get the best defender, but the game plan is steered towards you, so everybody's looking at you. But I think in those some of those trying moments, and some of those, like you talk about, those empty games at the Smoothie King Center, and those struggles to put a NBA looking roster on the floor, I think Trey Murphy got a lot of growth and development and important reps during that time. And I think having him come back and having him step into some of that newly developed growth, but also not having to do as much because there's so much offensive talent, I think that's a sweet spot for Trey, where he can kind of experiment a little bit with the things that he learned and that he added to his toolbox from last year, but also be on a competitive team that can do some things and he can show, you know, his talent. Again, he got a new contract as well. It's going to be very, you know, you're no longer just that cute, you know, this is nice development. You are paid as a 2 option now. You are the second option on this team. There is no Brandon Ingram. There is no CJ McCollum. It is Zion, Jordan Poole, you, DeJounte. You are the guys, right? And we talked about all of those veterans being brought in to help this team grow up. CJ, Garrett Temple, all of those guys. you have now gotten to the point where now you are the older guy. Jeremiah Fizz is trying to get you in the TikToks. You are now the mature people around the league. And so I think it's good for Trey and Herb to kind of now take the realms of this team in their respective roles and drive this Pelicans team forward along with Zion as they try to make the stain of last year be the stain of last year.
Right. Obviously with Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, especially as a Pelican fan, to my brother's point, they're two extremely excited players. And to the point earlier on the pod, everyone has a chip on their shoulders. Everyone has something to prove. Well, Herb Jones and Trey Murphy just got paid. And they got paid as if they're going to be future somethings in some degree. And to my brother's point, last year, through the hell and high waters that was the second part of last season, Trey Murphy got to experiment and got to grow with himself. But Herb Jones didn't, right? And so for a year like this, I think it's so important to see what's the offensive peak of Herb Jones, because Zion, of course, is the Pelicans' ceiling raiser. And if they ever want to aspire to be anything, it's going to come through Zion or some other generational talent that may magically walk into the New Orleans franchise. But the floor raisers are Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. So when Zion is inevitably missing games or out, are those two the ones that can hold down your team for however amount of time? Because people talk about Trey Murphy, and I think the interesting part and the interesting dialogue and narrative of this summer is that the Pelicans are the worst team ever, and the Pelicans are only winning 31 games. But if to a man, you go to a podcast, you go to an ESPN film, you go to a TV show, if you went to them and said, well, Trey Murphy's available, I got 29 other teams that are like, yes, what does it take? How many draft picks? Then I'm going to go you one more. If Herb Jones was available, I got 29 other teams that would. So if that's the case, along with Zion, who seems to be pulling yourself together, if those three players by yourself before you even get to the secondary and the tertiary and the gangster rookies off the bench, before you even get there, those three is a hell of a trio to build around. And so if those two continue on the development and the arc of this team, I just think it gives them so much more, because I think for a player like Trey Murphy, he's itching to show, y'all sat me on the bench for Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum for way too damn long. You held me back from where I was supposed to go anyway. And if that's the case, with Herb Jones kind of developing in that way, I just think that there's something aligning with that starting lineup. And so I think that those two and the arcs, but on the defensive and the offensive end, will tell the story of where the Pelicans go this season.
Gosh, I'll tell you what. I know we've gone for a fair while now, but I'm hyped. I genuinely am. I'm up and about, and when you've got, I think you're exactly right. Like 29 other teams. Okay, Zion's on the block. Phone straight away. Hey, what do we need to do to make this done? Trey Murphy, same thing. What are we going to do? Derek Queen.
Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy is not available, and people were still trying to trade for him.
What was it? The Warriors are interested in him.
Yeah.
So
I bet they are.
So wait. I think it's it's that narrative again, isn't it? Let's get him to a team where we can put him on national TV. I think we have all the talent. It's now just bringing it all together and keeping everyone on the court. Gosh, just stay on the court, please. Give me even if I'm not even going to put it out there. Just play every game.
I'll do one better for you. If the Pelicans could just make it through the season and lose in a playoff series the way everyone else loses, that tells you, okay, you need something here. Okay, you need to improve here. I will take that. I want to see it happen and be told this is wrong in order to know where to go next, other than being left in. Yes, exactly.
You sit there, you get all the way to the playing game. Zion's looking fantastic. Teams, yep. Let's get in there, and he does a hamstring. You're like, so what are we again?
Yep.
Every year, exactly. What are we? I don't know.
Exactly.
And I always think back to like that, the Houston Rockets, Tracy McGrady, Yao Ming type setup. Same thing. Mm-hmm. The what ifs of that, where you've got teams that had all the talent in the world, two absolute A graders, couldn't stay healthy. You know, we go all the way through history. There's teams like that you could never stay
that Brooklyn Nets team.
Exactly right. Yeah, couldn't stay healthy. You know, all the talent, everyone wants to go in. You have the opportunity, and you can't get the health. I mean, even like Phoenix, last year I suppose, or the year before with KD and Booker and Beal and all the talent. There was no reason why that should have been bad. It was a lot of it was injuries, right? Memphis throughout history, same thing, injuries and the like. It's always the great equaliser, and you know this team, gosh, healthy is wealth because everyone's got the talent. It's just who can be healthy at the right time, and bring it all together when everyone else can't seem to. Guys, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your Sunday evenings to have a chat. What have you guys got going on? Where can we find you? Big plug. Who wants to do the spiel?
Go ahead, Raph. That's your lane.
Yeah, NewOrleans.basketball. That's on YouTube. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to it. We're excited too. This is our time of the year. To your points, the Saints aren't leaving a lot to be desired on the football front, so I think the Pelicans are going to be the one that brings the entertainment. So if you want to check us out, that's NO_basketball, no E. Follow myself, Raphael Rattler. Follow my brother, Garrick Rattler. And we'll be with you. We're right next to you, Lyle, going through it again. Hopefully with less injuries.
It's all right. We'll have to do this again because it's been an absolute pleasure. It's well overdue, as you said at the top. But I've really enjoyed this, guys. But I think we'll leave it at that, shall we? This has been Flock, a New Orleans Pelicans podcast. I'm your host, Lyle Swithenbank, joined with the Rattler Brothers from NewOrleans.basketball. Make sure you, of course, stay safe. Hit that subscribe button. And, of course, bye for now.